This is Cassandra Williams from Educational Innovation 360. This is Fast Track Friday for our leaders. So today we're talking about AI. How are you navigating AI for your school, your district? What are you doing to bring clarity, strategy, and even confidence for your teachers about using AI into the schools? And then we know it is growing quickly. What are you doing to unpack these opportunities for our teachers to build these real world challenges? So hopefully this presentation will talk about really thinking about policy, what does it look like for equity, and then how can we use this to support our instructional leadership. My one question is, are you using AI? So we know 60% of K-12 principals are now utilizing AI, right? And so usually it's just done, but there's no policy guidance. Really thinking about what this looks like is important. And so thinking of how you're utilizing it or how you're learning about AI, and you're noticing the AI is advancing faster and faster, whether it's district level policies, maybe we can use it to improve professional development, maybe we can use it to kind of thinking about, implementation and supporting uneven equity concerns, right? So thinking about how you use it, what you need to do in administration, instructional support, policy gaps, and equity. I think there's a lot that we can do using AI. Think about what is your primary applications. First, let's think about time saver. Let's just say time saver in communication is crucial. We're thinking about how we can use either chat, Magic School AI, or School.ai to streamline our newsletters, things like our memos and our announcements, because it really supports that back end operation as well. So how are we using it as an administrator, such as policy writing, scheduling, which is like a terror for some of our leaders. And then finally, thinking about instructional leadership. How can we use this in hiring, evaluation metrics, and even thinking about teacher development resources? So we think of the policy gap, right? And what we're seeing, how people are really navigating AI without some type of map or kind of guidance. But what we know is that the training and the guidance, there are disparities. And so at the top, you'll see all schools, about 18%. I'm missing numbers. I don't know where my numbers went. Next, we're at lower poverty schools, 25%. And here, high poverty is 13%. So really thinking about, what does this look like, the disparities, when only 13% of high poverty schools are receiving any guidance on AI. This lack of direction kind of forces principals to create this randomized policy, and they're very reactive based on the situation. Without consistent standards on data privacy, even thinking about academic integrity, what are the teachers' classroom practices, right? And this is kind of a significant systematic thing that we need to do to make sure that these policies are in place. Typically, you tend to see these things happen from the district, but when you're developing these AI policies, we would like to think that it will apply across all students, it will apply to all teachers, it will apply to all schools. But what's happening is principals are making individual ad hoc kind of policies. But thinking about what will our policies be around, really understanding assessment, right? Understanding what is our current usage, and then what is the infrastructure and what gaps do we have now to where now with AI we can kind of fill. Second, we're thinking about our engagement. So if we are truly getting input from our staff, our students, and of course our families, then of course it will help in the policy development. So then there's the policy creation, really looking at, addressing, academic integrity, what does it mean when, right? And then what are the privacy aspects of it? And then what are the tools that we're going to use in this space? And then last but not least is the implementation. Really being able to kind of think of consistency through, constant handbooks, training. I'm all about asynchronous learning. So how are we going to make sure that these policies are implemented, but people know about the policy besides the handbook? Now, the good thing is you're not alone. We're all looking at each other's frameworks and policies. So thinking about the broader frameworks that are emerging, thinking about the initiatives that are coming out, funding around creating training, public and private partnerships that you're seeing kind of grow. We're also looking internationally. Countries like Australia really are leading the initiative with goals and guidelines. So thinking about other educational organizations, like what toolkits are already out there, what case studies, what templates can we use for our state or implement with our school and our district. These resources are very helpful, and we know each school has their unique context content, but just making sure there's something at your school around what this looks like. Now, we are moving into different territory, right? And so thinking about how do we ensure equity in everything we do, because equity is a concern. Looking at what are the systematic barriers that our high poverty schools face. And so we definitely know, of course, limited broadband, fewer devices in certain spaces, less funding for professional development. And so sometimes without intervention, AI can kind of deepen the digital divide. But thinking about what are we doing, equitable strategies. So thinking about how do we investigate certain infrastructure using AI, how do we offer targeted or asynchronous professional development, choosing inclusive tools while we're using it, and constantly building partnerships to expand access. So here are the components that I think of when we're thinking about how do we make sure equity is involved, especially with AI. So now is the time. So here's our plan of action. I try not to get off here without talking about what do we need to do to step forward. Here's the plan of action. Thinking of what is our strategic planning. So are we aligning AI with school goals through strategic planning, and who's at the table, right? And thinking about that. When we're looking at tool, how are we selecting a tool kind of with educational benefits, maybe apps with privacy concerns. What does the professional development look like? How are we providing ongoing training for staff with safe and ethical? How are teachers implementing this in their classroom structures? We look at who are the stakeholders, how are our teachers and students and parents included in the policy, as well as citing and utilizing the policy in everything they do. And then what is our impact on assessment? What are we doing to build capacity for everybody that's in the building? So if we're working together, of course, these are some of our values: safety, equity, and student well-being. So I challenge you, what are you going to do to make sure that this is a thing at your school?